Thinking about intelligent life on social media and what it takes for an intelligent life to flourish in that kind of environment. And I don't mean by that that social media, intelligent people on social media. In fact, I think that the presence of people we might think of as intelligent isn't even necessary, but certainly isn't enough for intelligent life to flourish. So I'm just thinking to what I mean by that. Actually, let me just reinforce what I mean. That's why I say that. When I say that the presence of intelligent people in social media isn't enough for intelligence to flourish, an analogy I draw there is the human brain, because I'm going to come back to the human brain. You know, a human brain, presumably for most of us, is intelligent, or it has some level of intelligence, some integrated information constituting intelligence, let's put it that way. But that's not because of the presence of particularly well connected neurons, is it? It's to do with the way that the system functions. And if a human brain, that system which is the human brain, misfunctions, then it stops being intelligent, right? So it's to do with systems and structures, really, I'm thinking of, and about how intelligence is a product of systems and structures. And here I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of complexity. And complexity having something to do with that idea of integrated information, which is a term from a neuroscientist called Tononi and his colleagues, integrated information theory. And they don't use the word intelligence, or if they do I can't remember them using it. They're talking more about it in terms of consciousness, but I think it works well in terms of intelligence as well. An intelligent system is one that can integrate lots of information, do things with it, you know, process it in some way, in ways which are more complicated. And the more complex the system, the more complex the amount of information that can be integrated, and the more complex the processing of that information can be. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about an intelligent system. And is social media an intelligent system? No, I don't think it is. Although I think it does vary. I mean, my experience, which was on YouTube for a long time, a little bit on Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms. I've tried most of them out, kind of tried to figure out how they work. And I do see fluctuating levels of what I'm thinking of as intelligence in that way. Their capacity to support, encourage, permit, or in some cases prevent that increasing complexity of a system, such that intelligence is enhanced of the system overall. So let me just think about some analogies here. I mean, the first analogy I would draw, for my own benefit really, is to do with the intelligence of the environment I'm surrounded by here. You might not want to think about it as intelligence, I'm not getting hung up on the word, but the way the natural world operates, as I understand it, at least the biological parts of it, are, you know, through those processes which we're all familiar with, through natural selection, through epigenetics, through sexual selection, through all those kind of processes which predator-prey relationships, all those kind of things which cause evolution to take place. And when those processes are working well, which they seem to be working well enough right now, then the complexity in the system is ratcheted up, isn't it? You know, as those famously described as arms races between different species competing for space, or competing for resources, or just, as I say, in predator-prey relationships, constant arms races between species, different animals and plants and so on. And the way that arms race proceeds is by each participant in those things becoming more complex. So we start from very simple life forms, and the life forms get more and more complex. More and more information becomes integrated, more and more capacity to process information, so that the whole system kind of embodies intelligence in that sense. And that explains the diversity and the complexity of the world that I'm surrounded by, and which I myself am a representative of. I think you'll also see it in some markets, you know, commercial markets. When they're functioning well, they're complex, have lots of information. But when they're not, they don't function as intelligently. Totally free markets don't work very intelligently. They allow monopolies to form. All those kind of things happen, which lower the amount of information that's capable of being intelligently processed. And over-regulated markets similarly don't perform well. They don't integrate lots of information. They're not flexible. They can't process information in a way that's usable to allow the systems, the structures to shift quickly enough. So, you know, again, that's a system which is, in its ideal form at least, is ideally complex, and the system is such that complexity ratchets up in the way that, as I say, the natural world ratchets up the amount of complexity in it just by the processes I mentioned: evolution, natural selection, sexual selection, epigenetics, whatever's. So ideal markets, not ideal markets, markets in the way that I'm talking about, again allow that complexity to increase year on year, ratchets up, whereas too tightly controlled or too free markets don't allow that. Third example, and this is where it comes back to the brain also does that. A totally hardwired brain, you can imagine that, one that's just like set in stone at birth, like a silicon chip. Is that how silicon chips work? Not sure. Anyway, you can imagine one that's just hardwired. All the synapses are wired together, little bits of copper or platinum filling your head, joining all the connections where they are. Not very intelligent, right? Because it can't learn, it can't adapt, it can't process new information. It's not behaving intelligently, or because the complexity is limited. There's no system in place which allows the complexity to be ratcheted up through, for example, learning or experience. But a totally soggy brain wouldn't do it either. You know, if you took a brain and put it through a blender and poured it back into a skull, all the same stuff would be there, but there's no structure in place which allows the intelligence to develop, which allows it to be manifest, and as I say, allows it to be ratcheted up to higher and higher levels of complexity. So again, there's a kind of optimal. But to stay with the brain, and after this brain I'm going to go back to social media. To stay with the brain, one of the things I think is really interesting about the way the brain works is it isn't a hardwired network, nor is it a bucket of slop. It's what I think of as a kind of leaky network. You know, when synapses fire, there's a passage of neurotransmitters across the synaptic cleft, you know, various chemicals go across that little gap, carry the message across. But when they do that, it's not like a little switch that just clicks on. That the chemicals that do that, the neurotransmitters, also kind of leak out into the surrounding substrate, the rest of the brain around it, so that synapses around that are also slightly potentiated, slightly primed, so they're more likely to fire as well. So it's neither a bucket of slop, nor is it made of platinum wires. It's a leaky network, and when it's leaking at an optimal level, then learning can take place, new neuronal connections can form, and intelligence is achieved by that kind of ratcheting up of the complexity of the system. The system is just leaky enough to allow that to happen, and I think that's ideal, really. And it's probably the same. I could probably work that analogy backwards, I'm not sure, but someone could probably work that analogy backwards to evolutionary systems and to market systems, maybe to other systems as well. But in terms of social media, I think social media also maybe, just a hypothesis, maybe has an optimal level of leakiness. You know, because if you think about how something like YouTube, this social media network works, or Twitter, you know, there are, it's not exactly hardwired connections, but there are distinct connections. You know, if I'm subscribed to a YouTube channel, most of the time I will see what those videos will appear in my inbox, and I will see them, and there's a direct connection between them, and if that's reciprocated, that will be the same in reverse. Sorry, I'm mentioning my dog's with me. Come on, please. Good girl. So there are, if not hardwired, then at least there are fairly substantial connections as part of that network. But then there's also leakiness, isn't there? The recommended videos at the side of each video, the side of the YouTube page, is a kind of leakiness that the algorithm builds into the system, which says you're not directly connected to these things, but the chemical soup of your interests has affected the neurons nearest to you, so you're probably like these too. But some other forms of leakiness have disappeared. For example, in the YouTube, what used to be called the activity feed, I'm not even sure it's called that anymore, but you know, 5 or 6 years ago, the YouTube activity feed, the page you went to when you signed in addition to showing what videos had been made available by people you subscribed to, it would also show people's likes that you'd subscribed to, and for a while it also showed comments that people you were subscribed to had made on other videos. So it was kind of a little bit more leakiness there. It wasn't just the people you were directly connected to that you were getting influenced by, it was also people who were 1 step, 2 steps removed that you were getting a hint of what they were doing, which allowed you to the network just leaked enough to allow you to do more complex things, see things you weren't used to seeing. Wasn't totally free form, wasn't totally random, your page wasn't a bucket of slop poured onto your screen, nor was it a set of platinum wires that just always showed you the same people over and over again. There was a little bit of leakiness. So people, as I say, just a few stages removed from yourself, their content was also being made available. And that, I think for a while there, for me at least, there was an optimal level of, or a better level of leakiness. I think the system worked more intelligently then. I think there was more complexity in the system. Because at the moment I don't think the system is very intelligent at all. And I don't think the complexity is good. I don't think the subscriber feed works very well. I think that new system where you click on the bell and it shoves everything into your inbox, that's too hardwired for my liking. And of course you don't, and the recommended videos, I hardly ever watch the recommended videos, they very rarely relate to what I want. So that's all gone down, and that was, I think that got kiboshed when Google Plus came in, and a lot of those kind of features, the features that used to be on your activity feed, they were all kind of parsed off onto Google Plus, weren't they? But yeah, it's a shame really, because I do like an intelligent network. And I just stress again, I'm not talking about the presence of intelligent people, although of course if intelligent people want to use it, that would be great. But how the network itself, the system itself, can manifest intelligence, raise the overall IQ levels, raise all of our game by being more complex, integrating more information, process more information in ways that allow that kind of intelligence to flourish. A leaky network. Make sense? I don't know.